The sun had barely crept above the jagged hills of Dust Creek, Wyoming, when Marshal Henry Blake saddled up his horse for another silent morning. The town had long since stopped whispering behind his back, but the scars of tragedy lingered like shadows in his eyes. His once booming laugh had disappeared, replaced by a hollow silence that wrapped around him like a noose. He wasn't the same man who had brought his little girl to church every Sunday. That man had died 7 years ago, the day his 6-year-old daughter, Clara, vanished without a trace during the town's annual harvest fair. Henry used to believe in God. He used to pray. Used to bow his head with Clara's tiny hand tucked into his calloused palm. But when the sheriff's dogs found nothing, when the flyers faded, and the townspeople moved on, Henry's faith went with them. He quit the church, cursed at the sky, and spent the next years chasing bandits, outlaws, and anything else that might help him outrun the unbearable ache in his chest. But no outlaw was ever cruel enough to distract him for long. That morning, like countless others before it, Henry rode out past the prairie fence, down where the land blurred into sky. A crimson sunrise painted the horizon, but he barely noticed. His eyes were trained on the distant hills and the emptiness between them. But then, something unusual caught his attention. A lone horse was trotting toward him from the west, no rider, no reins, its dusty coat speckled with mud and sweat. It moved with urgency, like it had a mission. Henry narrowed his eyes, one hand resting on the revolver at his hip. He raised his hand slowly, speaking gently, "Easy there, boy. Where's your rider?" The horse came to a slow halt just feet away. A rolled-up piece of paper was tied around its neck with a pink ribbon. Henry's breath caught. He hadn't seen a ribbon like that in years. His hands trembled as he untied it. He unrolled the paper and stared at it, his heart crashing against his ribs. It was a drawing. Crayon on cheap paper, childish and imperfect. A picture of a little girl, holding hands with a man with a sheriff's star. And next to them, a horse with the same white streak down its mane, identical to the one standing before him. He dropped to his knees. The signature at the bottom read, "Love, Clara," the same looping scrawl she used on birthday cards. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "This can't be, this ain't real." But the truth was staring him in the face. That ribbon was hers. He tied it in her hair the day she vanished. He remembered every detail. And now, 7 years later, it was back, on a horse that had somehow found its way to him. Henry looked into the animal's eyes. They were calm. Knowing. And as ridiculous as it seemed, the horse nudged him, turned, and began walking away. Slowly, as if waiting for him to follow. He didn't hesitate. He mounted his horse and followed the strange animal westward, past the edge of his usual patrol, beyond Dust Creek, into the untamed country where outlaws once roamed and myths still lingered. Hours passed, the sun now high and unrelenting. But Henry pressed on, led by the mysterious horse through ravines, across dry riverbeds, and deep into the hills. Every part of his mind screamed this was madness, some delusion crafted by grief, but his heart told a different story. Finally, they reached a small, weather-beaten cabin tucked between cottonwood trees. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. Henry slowed his horse, eyes scanning the place like a hawk. The strange horse stopped and neighed. A woman stepped out. Older, thin, eyes cautious but kind. She froze when she saw Henry. Behind her, a girl stepped forward, around 13 now. Dirty blonde hair, blue eyes wide, and that same little smile. The one Henry used to tuck in every night. His heart stopped. Clara. She stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes filled with tears. "Daddy." He dismounted before his boots hit the ground, stumbling, sobbing, running toward her. She leapt into his arms, clutching him like she would never let go again. His calloused hands cradled her head as tears streaked down his dusty face. "Oh God, my baby. My baby girl. The woman watched them, arms folded gently across her chest. Her name was Marie. She explained everything between cups of weak coffee and silence thick with emotion. Clara had wandered off at the fair and had been taken, kidnapped by a man who vanished into the hills. For years, Marie had been hiding, protecting Clara, running from the man who once hurt her too. She was a survivor, too scared to go to lawmen. It wasn't until the man died, attacked by wild animals in the canyon a few weeks prior, that she finally felt safe. She'd seen Henry's face on old wanted posters or public notices in towns. Knew he was a lawman. Knew Clara's drawings were always of him. So she sent the only horse she trusted, with the ribbon and drawing, to lead him here. Henry listened, hands gripping Clara like she'd vanish if he let go. He didn't speak. Not for a while. That night, under the stars, Clara sat next to her father, tracing the sheriff's badge on his chest. "Do you still believe in God, Daddy?" He looked at her, broken and whole all at once. "I didn't," he whispered. "But now I do." She smiled and curled into his side. A week later, the entire town of Dust Creek gathered on Main Street as Henry rode in, Clara perched in front of him, arms wrapped around his waist. The church bell rang for the first time in years. People wept openly. Henry didn't return to chasing outlaws. He built a new home. Became the sheriff again, but different now. He greeted everyone with warmth, patience, and gratitude. Every Sunday, he and Clara walked to church together, her hand tucked safely in his. He never doubted again.